They said humans couldn't survive the trial. She walked out, laughing with a broken collar in hand. The Galactic Council's chamber fell silent as Captain Sarah Chen stepped through the massive doors, her boots echoing against the crystalline floor. In her right hand, she carried the twisted remains of what had once been a neural suppression collar, the kind that had never been broken by any sentient being in the 3,000 years since the trials began. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Vexai, his four eyes widening in disbelief. The Zephyrian's usually perfect composure cracked as he stared at the human female who shouldn't have been standing there at all. The trial of absolute submission was designed to break the will of even the most stubborn species. It was the Council's ultimate test, a neural maze that forced subjects to experience their deepest fears while slowly crushing their sense of self until complete compliance was achieved. The collar ensured no one could simply endure the pain. It made resistance literally impossible by hijacking the subject's nervous system. Every species that had undergone the trial had emerged as perfect servants of the Council. The proud Kethmori, warriors the telepathic Andromedans, the hive-minded Centaurians, all had been humbled and integrated into the Council's empire. It was the price of joining galactic civilization, they said, a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. Humans were supposed to be no different. If anything, they were expected to break faster than most. Their species was young, chaotic, and lacked the mental disciplines of older civilizations. The Council had been generous in even allowing them to attempt the trial, rather than simply classifying them as a servitor race immediately. Sarah had volunteered when Earth's representatives explained the situation. Someone had to undergo the trial for humanity to earn a seat at the galactic table. The other candidates, diplomats, scientists, military leaders, had all seemed more qualified, but Sarah had insisted, and something in her eyes had convinced them to let her try. Now, as she stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species, that same look blazed with an intensity that made several council members shift, uncomfortably in their seats. "You want to know how I broke your little toy?" Sarah asked, holding up the collar. The metal was twisted into an impossible spiral, as if someone had grabbed both ends and wrung it like a wet towel. "You want to know why your impossible trial failed?" Counselor Thrank, a massive crustacean-like being, clicked his mandibles nervously. "The trial has never failed. The collar cannot be removed or damaged from within. Our technology, your technology," Sarah interrupted, "assumes that survival is the highest priority." She began walking slowly around the circular chamber, her gaze moving from one council member to the next. "It assumes that when faced with ultimate pain, ultimate terror, ultimate despair, any rational being will choose submission over destruction." She stopped in front of the Andromedian delegate, whose pale features had gone even whiter. "You showed me Earth burning, my family screaming, every person I'd ever loved dying in agony, and you made me feel responsible for all of it." The human's voice remained steady, almost conversational. "You made me experience the heat death of the universe, the cold emptiness of eternity, the absolute certainty that nothing I could ever do would matter in the end." "Then why?" began Counselor Zarwin. "Because you made one critical error," Sarah said, her lips curving into a smile that held no warmth. "You assumed humans are rational." She held up the collar again, and several council members could now see that her wrists bore deep scars, marks that should have been impossible to create while wearing the device. "You see, your trial works on the premise that psychological torture will eventually break anyone. But humans? We've been breaking ourselves for fun since before we discovered fire. We write stories about heroes who choose death over surrender. We celebrate people who walk into certain doom for principles that won't matter in 100 years. Sarah's laugh echoed through the chamber, and it was the sound of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it wanting. Your worst nightmare was just Tuesday for a species that invented extreme sports and thought, "Hey, let's make this deadlier." You showed me hell, and I've seen humans voluntarily go to worse places just to prove they could. She approached the center of the chamber where the High Counselor sat, his ancient features creased with confusion and growing alarm. "But here's the real joke," Sarah continued. I didn't break your collar through some hidden human superpower or ancient Earth technique. I broke it because when your machine tried to make me choose between my freedom and my species' survival, I chose a third option. She held up her scarred wrists. I chose to rip the damn thing off with my bare hands. Consequences be damned. Your collar was designed to suppress rebellion, not to handle someone stupid enough to ignore pain, permanent injury, and probable death, just to spite you. The High Counselor's voice was barely a whisper. The neural feedback alone should have killed. You should have, Sarah agreed cheerfully. Would have killed anyone sensible. But you know what humans call someone sensible enough to give up when things get impossible? She leaned forward, her smile widening. We call them quitters, and we really hate quitters. The silence stretched until Sarah straightened and clasped her hands behind her back in a mockery of military attention. So, honored counselors, shall we discuss humanity's membership in your little club? Because I think you'll find we have some very interesting ideas about how things should be run around here. As murmurs of panic began to spread through the chamber, Sarah's laughter rang out again, the sound of a species that had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage, and had no intention of going quietly into anyone's night.